I'm your host, Kristoffer Polaha. Life can be scary and sometimes hard. Seems like you got a winning hand till you dealt the wrong card. It ain't fair, but you're not alone. Down and out or high and dry, in the darkest valley or the coldest night, you're fine, 'cause you're not alone. With a song bubbling in your heart, where a story can give you a brand new start. You don't have to travel this big bad world all on your own. It's better when we do it together. All mixed up and upside down, feels like there's no one else around. That ain't right. You're not alone. But when it all goes south and life gets tough and you've been knocked down and the waves are rough, you just fight, 'cause you're not alone. We're the song bubbling in your soul, where a story can make you feel whole. You don't have to travel this big bad world all on your own. It's better when we do it together. Better when we do it together. Yeah, it's better when we do it together. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the Polaha Chautauqua, guys. Super mellow day today in my house. Feeling the song a little different tonight. Kind of a soft intro. I am potentially very excited indeed. We have been talking now for the past, 6-7 months about what it means to be living the full expression of the human existence, of the human experience. Right? We're alive. We're on this planet. We got one shot at it. And what does it mean to be living it to the very, very, very fullest? And so today I wanted to bring on an expert. I'm going to cut right to the chase. I wanted to bring an expert onto the top of the show today. And I wanted to talk about health and fitness and keeping your body what I'm going to call race ready. And what that does for your soul. Okay? So last week we talked about Tim Griffin, about leadership, working at home, and these three characters came clear. To be an effective leader, you have to have trust, right, with the people that you're working with. You have to be able to communicate clearly with the people that you're working with, and you have to love them. There has to be a sense of respect and a sense of decency and dignity, and he used this word equality about how you treat each other, which then creates a culture of, healthy and fervent culture, productive culture, helps him be a great governor. And by leading, I mean serving, right? And so if you're not race ready, I find it hard personally to be my best to other people. And so when I say race ready, what I mean, or being my best self, what I mean by that is I got to eat right, I got to get exercise, and I've got to treat my body roughly. And by that, I just mean pushing it into uncomfortable places for a little while for the sake of making it stronger. This means to me the discipline of the body. It also gives me a sharpness of mind. I run, I train, right? I'm so excited. I have this whole thing written out, and I'm sitting here second guessing myself, and I just saw that she's on ready to go. I have a guest today who I want to cut right to the point, because I was just listening to her podcast, and she has so much amazing information to share with you guys. She is an elemental person. I met her in 2004 when I was working on North Shore. And when I met her, I was just really impressed by the honesty and the sort of ferocious, courageous nature with which she lived her life. Before I bring her on, I'm going to give you a quick rundown. If you don't know who she is, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of Gabby Reece, my guest today. So Gabby Reece, she first off is a wife, she's a mother, she's got 3 beautiful babies. She is the host of the Gabby Reece Show, which is a podcast. which is really just an ongoing conversation with all these experts and specialists, and frankly talks a lot about life and what it means to be living fully, to be your best self. She's a professional or former professional beach volleyball player. She was Nike's first female spokeswoman. She's creator of HIGX and co-founder of XPT. She's an executive member of Laird Superfood. She went to FSU. I think that she's probably the most photographed volleyball player, male or female, in the history of the world, which is kind of amazing. Nike let her make tennis shoes. She's sold more than Michael Jordan. She's also a New York Times bestseller. The book is called My Foot is Too Big for the Glass Slipper. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to embarrass her and I'm going to myself because it's really that incredible. So I'm going to cut to the chase and I'm going to bring on Gabby Reece. Hi, Gabby.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm great. How are you? I just came watching my kids my one of my kids get yanked around on a like an ocean mat. You know, when they pull them and whatever. It was fun.
Yeah. Where are you? Are you in California or are you elsewhere?
No, you know, we spent most of COVID in California, but we came to Kauai at the end of November.
Okay.
So just this is where my husband's from, and we had just some stuff to finish up, so we're here.
That's awesome. First off, I want to thank you for joining me today. I don't know why you've been on my heart and mind for this show in particular for like the last, I don't know, like 4 months. I went back to see that when I found that picture, and it was like back in November. And I was like, man, I've been thinking to have her come on for a while now. And I'm not sure exactly why. I don't know, other than the fact that you and Laird are like legendary. You've achieved this sort of, I keep wanting to work out with you guys. And at some point when all the stars align, I would
Yeah,
love to come and work out with you guys and learn how to do what you do. Because do you know Brian Kailana?
yeah, very well, of course.
Yeah, so Brian worked on North Shore. And so I used to run under the water with Brian. And the last time I did was like a week before my son was born. And so ever since I was like, man, I want to do that again.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
here in the pool because it's a controlled environment, and so there's an element where we've learned how by using the controlled environment of the pool, where you can sort of almost create a curriculum so you can do different levels of training because there's sort of things that are measured out. So it's like using the element of water and such, but now like sort of building out that curriculum.
yeah, yeah. We went with a stunt guy, Brian and I, and this stunt guy from Texas joined us.
Yeah,
And he literally was throwing up on the beach because it was so deep and it was intense. It's an intense workout. I mean,
yeah.
it was like,
You're in a place where there's no air. It's pretty clear.
yeah, yeah. All right. So, well, let's cut to it. I wanted to talk to you today because when I look at you and I look at you, if you follow Gabby on Instagram, you'll see her life is like this endless summer. I mean, you guys, it's kind of an amazing thing that you guys do. And if you live in California, we lived in the Pacific Palisades, and you guys are literally legendary. Like people are like, oh, did you, there was a fire and Laird saved his house with a hose. I mean, this guy, like, you hear the stories, and your husband is Laird
Yeah,
Hamilton, who is
yeah,
a big wave surfer. And so, of course, working in Hawaii, all you're going to hear about is Laird. And at
yeah,
the time, Riding with Giants came out. And then when you and I worked together, I was just so impressed by you. And so I've kept up with you guys from afar for a long time. And I've sent you little emails randomly and saying, hey, I got a new show out. Come, check it out. And you've always been so sweet to like reply and be kind. And now here you are today. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
of course.
Um, but what I really wanted to talk to you about is, so if you talk to me, you've done extraordinary things in your life, like really, truly extraordinary things. What would you say, and all of this in perspective, by the way, of we're all as a globe going through quarantine together. Like there's this crazy pandemic happening. And I think that when I had this impulse to start this live because people were scared and I was scared, frankly. And when the face of death roams around the face of the earth as vigorously as it's doing, like right now during a pandemic or during wartime, when you just see the numbers of casualties go so high, I think we're all called to this higher standard. And So I just wanted to start a conversation with people, and have been since last March, about what it means to be alive, like what it means to be fully living. And
Mhm.
I do think that, having followed you and knowing about, I think that you guys do that. Like, you do this thing that I've been calling kingdom living, which is the full expression of the human experience, where you're just, you know, living with honesty. And so what I wanted to know, I'm curious, what would you say are some of the sources of your strength? Like, where do you pull out all the stops and say, this is, I'm see this target, I'm going for it, and your motherhood and your wifehood and all of it.
Well, I think, it's growing really comfortable with failing quite a bit. I think when you come from a sports background, you learn that losing and failing daily and weekly is actually a part when you talk about a full human experience. I think we forget because people celebrate victories or traits that appear to be somebody who knows what they're doing or under control. And I think really what we should be reminding ourselves and young people is that not knowing and blowing it and losing and being embarrassed and all of these things is actually part of the full experience. And so I grew up in the Caribbean, and Laird grew up on Kauai, and had the good fortune of meeting Laird at 25. So in a way, it was almost like a reinforcement through adulthood of that. Not that perfect is ever the goal. It's okay. The idea that I heard a woman, Dr. Caroline Leaf, talk about there. She's a neuroscientist. So nature, nurture, but then this I factor. And I think that's important that everybody listening is reminded that there is something that like you can contribute that's uniquely you. And I think sometimes we're either comparing or we're trying to fit into something or we're being told something. But if we actually have the opportunity to hear our own voice and what we're good at, and also work on the things that we're not good at, I think that can take us to extraordinary places. And I'd love to say that I was so strategic in everything. I have been strategic in my life, but it's more about listening to the thing that excited me, turned me on, thought I would be good at, and also the thing I'd be willing to grind out, like to get up every day and be like, it's really hard right now. And I'm not getting it, or it's not easy, or I've had seasons where I got, beat every weekend. It's like, I think it's more about that instead of, okay, I set a goal and then, aim and shoot. Now, having said all of that, once you have the thing that you want to do lined up, you've got to create a strategy and a practice that reflects that. You can't be like, oh, I want to do that. And then nothing about what you're doing, reading, saying, eating, moving is lining up with what you're saying. So I think, of course, having a practice and something that lines up with that is, of course, critical.
Yeah. When you say eating, like, how much okay, how were you always an athlete when you were a little kid? Were you just like fast and running, or like, so your life was defined by your athleticism, starting with, like, would you say high school and then into
Yeah.
college?
Yeah. I mean, growing up in the Virgin Islands, and I was 6'3" at 15. I think I was,
You're 6'3".
yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
exactly. That was a lot of fun. They think you're the teacher, not one of the students. Listen, I think I'm a good student and I'm coachable. And there's certain things I probably do well, but if you thought like, oh, I'm a great athlete all the way around, I'm not one of those people, I don't think. I live with somebody who's like that, and I know a ton of people like that. I think I can get it done, and I think also when I'm getting squeezed, I can, I learn to push out the chirpy voice and say, okay, I'm going to focus and execute. So I probably have that, but I wouldn't say, like, people are like, wow, you're an amazing athlete. I was probably athletic, but nothing crazy. And then when I moved to Florida, my junior year, is when I really got into organized athletics, basketball and volleyball. And it was just a really good opportunity for me. That's why I went to university. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that I all the way. I mean, I dabbled in volleyball even when I was a bit younger, but I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to be really good at that.
Yeah. It just kind of flowered like in high school, and then off into college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you said work ethic. Is that something that you had? Like, where did that come from? Was that something that was instilled in you as from parental figure, or was that just you? Was there something inside of you that said, Gabby, Eye of the Tiger, go for it? Like, where does that come from? Because you mentioned the I factor too. Like, where is that? Where do you get that?
You know, quite frankly, huge dysfunction. You know, growing up, I didn't always live with my parents. My father died when I was 5. I was left up to my own sort of devices. And so my nature is probably, I have a little natural rigidity already. Like I always used to joke that my parents were so smart because if they didn't clean it, I would. So I have some rigidness, you know, kind of inflicted discipline, which is one of the things actually that I have to fight against, because some of us get comfortable with certain things and then we have routines and then we groove certain patterns and it actually inhibits us from growing. So it's not all good, but I'd say a lot fear. Um, you know, I've had this conversation. There's a guy named Stephen Kotler, an incredible author. If people have ever read his books on flow and flow state, and I was like, I've asked him, like, have you ever seen people that do these things that are perceived as impossible? I'm not suggesting me. I'm talking people riding giant waves or climbing mountains or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, have you ever met one that was like kind of healthy and came from like a good family and all that? And he's like, no, they're all broken. You know? And so, and maybe that's like you don't follow the rules. So all of a sudden, impossible is like you don't even, it never occurs to these people. So I would say that it was something that was probably formed out of heavy duty survival. I mean, there is the battle as a parent, right? Like
Yeah.
Laird and I have worked hard to try to have a home life that creates stability and all these things. And then you wonder, in which way are you serving your children?
Right.
So, you know, that's just happened to be my path.
Do you feel that? Do you feel that horror like all the time? Is it right at the door all the time? Like, do you feel like you're still
Mm.
kind of pushing it back, or do you
Yeah.
think you squared it away in your life in a way that's been healthy?
Yeah, I think I've tried to look at it, go towards opportunity instead of run from fear or, you know, the things of trying to control things or wanting stability or what have you. I think you get to a place in your life where you go, why am I playing the rules of a chess game of when I was a child, when I'm playing adult backgammon? The rules don't apply. I'm playing a different board and a different game. Why am I playing this other mindset? So I think it's really important to come to a place where you go, it's just not necessary anymore. And you know, your reptilian brain, you know, like things pick up and you go, oh, there, you know, there it is. But I think more, it's like not to limit ourselves to the thing that worked for us very well when we were young, can hold us back and stunt us as if we're older, if we don't learn new things and new tools and new forms of inspiration and motivation. So what I've learned is, you know, everyone talks about like, I'm so grateful. It's like, yeah, okay. But I think it's when we have opportunity or we have mobility, it would be a really good idea to recognize that that's a real gift. And if you want to have continued mobility and choices, then you better take care of the opportunities. And so I'd like to say
Un,
that,
yeah.
go ahead,
I was going to unpack mobility for me a little bit. Like, what do you mean by that?
choice to do what you to for your job. Maybe you get to pick a partner you want to be with. If you go to the grocery store and you think today I'm going to buy organic. If one would lose the sight of the real luxury of being able to eat food that was healthy, you're missing kind of some of the most basic important stuff. You know, it's like people could say like yellow diamonds. It's like, yeah, no, that's not luxury. Luxury is like good food, you
Yeah.
know?
Go to the grocery.
Yeah, and so the way I was raised, I don't get distracted so much by that other stuff. So I think I'm really clear about the amount of mobility. I mean, I hit a white ball for a living, and then I get to move in the space of self-care, and you know, all the like. If I'm an idiot, that I wouldn't recognize that that's mobility. And what you want to do is you want to do a really good job. So then, as you move through your life, you go. It'd be like you. Like I really would like to work on that show with that director or with that other actor, And so what does mobility do? It gives me options. And not, I buy more stuff, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But the real thing, like maybe I'd want to live there, or I'd want to, like I said, be with a partner I want to be with, have the opportunity to take care of myself. So I think I work really hard so that Jocko Willink talked about discipline is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that and more beautifully, like it doesn't get any simpler than that. It's like I'm willing to work as hard as I need to have that freedom.
Yeah. On the show a while ago, I was talking about self-control and the idea that when you can start controlling your thoughts, and your thoughts, which are the grandfathers, your actions, the more control you have over yourself, right? The more, ultimately, the more freedom you have, because then all of a sudden you can be more patient, you can be more kind, you can be good, you can be joyful, you can choose love, you can do all these things that become almost instinctively harder to do if you've lost your self-control. Like if you just flip at a switch and your temper's nasty, you can't help yourself, what goes in your body, and you just have to eat or drink or do whatever you want whenever you want, you're pretty much a slave to that stuff, right?
Yeah, I call it the short game, right? You're playing the short game, pulse, F that guy, and like I'm going to show them, and I'll eat the bag of whatever. That's the short game. I take a long game player, which, it's like the arc on the story's longer. Sometimes you don't get the immediate payoff, like I won, like Larry and I had this interesting conversation recently about my low brain and my higher brain. And the low brain is like, I want to get the record straight. I want to show everyone how smart I am, that I'm dealing with. If someone's being condescending to me, let's say, I want everything to be fair, which is ridiculous. And then my high brain is like, oh, I want to get to the place where I'm in the clean air and I'm moving around. And if the person across from me thinks, oh, they're right, and they've shown me, I'm okay, especially at this age, being like, you totally have that victory. Like, you go for it, you win. Because what you realize in the long game is, if you're going to get caught up in trying to keep the record straight and show people all the reasons you're right, or why you're smart, or why you're gonna, enforce your will on them. I've even had, like, that's how bad my low brain. Sometimes I'm like, I'm 6'3", 175 pounds. I'm like,
I could make you do whatever.
I've had mean ladies, and I'm like, I could pitch you right now. Oh, that's your low brain. That's your low brain being like, oh, and that's short game. I want to play the long game, and I want to be a winner in a way that's like, forward traveling, that I don't have to be right, that I don't have to win. But that's just a different deal. But it is also a practice. The more you practice that, the easier it gets. Having children helps you because, you don't understand, you don't know what's going on, you're out of touch, like all that stuff. They kind of help you practice being like, yeah, you're right, I don't understand.
Well, it's not your it's not your movie anymore. All of a sudden you're like, it's about them, it's not about me anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And something really liberating when the new goal is like, what am I trying to do? What makes me feel really good based on my own experience, not if I can get approval from somebody down the street, or to show someone how tough I am, but just to be like, what do you really want to do? And there's a liberation in that, but it's a practice. And to your point earlier, the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah. Two questions for you. The first one, how do you feed your spirit? Like, how do you, like, you guys seem very elemental. Like you and your spouse seem very elemental. How do you feed your soul? Like, what do you do?
If I have the opportunity to be close to nature, even if just to look at it, again, if you go back to like a luxury, it's like, if you lived in New York City, why would the apartments near Central Park cost more? It's like, because
Right.
it can move in closer to anything natural. So I think for me, it's that, and it's the constant reminder of, in this moment, I'm healthy, my family's healthy, most of my friends are healthy. I have a roof over my head, and I feel like it's pretty simple for me. And if I can train because that's also, besides all of the hormonal, the physiology on that. People go like, what do you do for you? And I'm like, the fact that I have the opportunity, time to train, that's pretty great.
Will you talk to me about that? What happens in your body if you don't? You posted something. I forget when you posted it. It was a while ago at this point, but you were like, I don't want to do it today, but I'm gonna. And it was this thing about just motivating yourself to work out even when you just didn't want to. It was a really honest. It was probably in the fall or like September at some point. You were feeling it, but you still went out and did it. So explain to me and explain to the people who are watching this right now, like, when you train, what's the difference between Gabby who's exercising and who's eating right versus a Gabby who's like just sitting and not doing the things that you know that you want to be doing?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't let myself. I don't really. I mean, if it's the Gabby that doesn't, it's like a day.
So you've literally
Yeah,
been like active for your whole, like, since you started volleyball, probably, like, you've been active like the whole time. It's been a
yeah.
big long arc.
On you that the truth is always the best way. I don't need to learn that lesson. It's like when you tell your kids, like, make new mistakes. Like, I'm making new mistakes. I'm not. You don't need to rant. Now, having said that, doesn't mean I'm like my best or I crush it every day. And I do have tricks, but at this point, it would be like seeing the light. It's like, yeah, I got it. I got to do it. Like, it's just better. So, but it doesn't, but I'm also clear. Like, some days I'm like, hey, I'm only going to be really good for 15 minutes today, or that's all the time I have. But the other thing is I've been injured before as an athlete. So there have been times that, like, I couldn't get from A to B without a crutch or help, or someone. So I think also, speaking of COVID, I don't need to lose my health to know that besides my relationships, it is the most valuable thing that I possess.
Yeah.
It's that simple for me. And I guess if you said, hey, what are you really good at? I think I'm really good about, like, I'm not distracted from that. Like, I'm clear. And if I'm doing behavior that looks like it's self-sabotaging, shoving something in my mouth, I just go, well, let me take a look at that. Like, I don't kick my butt and go, oh, I'm a bad person. It's like, what's going on? Like, why are you doing that?
Right. Right. And when you say bad food, are you talking about like fast food? Are you talking about candy? What are you talking about when you say something bad? I imagine that you eat like only superfood, like amazing, like pure fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And
You know what? Weird thing. Like, I mean, I used to eat a lot of more chocolate than now. Um, you know, uh, I'm a salty girl. So if you said chips, but okay, this is obnoxious. I only will eat, there's one brand that, like, makes it with coconut oil or avocado oil. People, one thing you should not be doing. There's a lady, Dr. Kate Shanahan. I don't know her, but I'm telling you, she has a thing called the Hateful Eight. She's a doctor, a real doctor. Just read it. We should not be eating those oils. It's pretty simple. If we can do the three, right? Avocado, coconut, and olive oil. I think avocado functions the best on high heat, but it's like it's hidden. It's in everything. If you talk about your cells and your mitochondria, the oils that we consume, that kills us. So just to give people a serious quick takeaway, grapeseed, cottonseed, safflower, sunflower, it's like, forget it. Dr. Kate Shanahan, the Hateful Eight, look it up. It's all right there. It's a doctor. You don't have to believe me. So for me, even within that, like, I'm going to be destructive, but, like, you know, not really.
yeah, you're like, even when I'm cheating, it's like it's
Oh.
you're yeah.
Food at that moment to medicate. Like, if I'm going into, let's say, in the days of, like, hey, we're going to some grandma Italian restaurant where she's hand making everything and I'm going to eat the bread and the lasagna, that's for enjoyment and celebration. But when I observe myself being like, I'm going to eat chips right now, it's like, what is your problem? Like,
You're like, what else is going on? Yeah.
correct. So it's just, I guess that, I always say, if we're eating for other reasons besides we're hungry, and that's okay, at least have the opportunity to observe and notice it. So are you feeling sad? Are you lonely? Are you bored? Are you stressed out? It's all okay, but at least notice.
Yeah. You're very self-aware. I was listening to your podcast. Happy birthday month, by the way. This is the last day of your birthday month.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And
Fun.
mine's the 18th of February, so I get to grow a year older. It's always fun when
Younger
you
for you.
yeah. But you said something, you were talking about intuiting. Your husband had said something and he didn't really say anything in particular, but you intuited a feeling behind. Like, it's interesting to me to hear you speak about lower brain, higher brain, the I factor. And I think what I'm trying to squeeze out of this is that I don't have to squeeze because you're saying it all, but like I've been talking to people. So people are afraid right now. There's been a lot of anxiety. And so I did this show on anxiety and the response was really, really overwhelming. And then I did this thing about forgiveness and sort of forgiving other people in your life, but then also being able to forgive yourself and say, hey, listen. And again, it was just this sort of floodgate, because usually people like us, if we're in the public eye, we don't really talk about our feelings that often. We don't really get down and dirty with like faith or your, all this kind of stuff. And so I was sort of talking about that. And it's interesting to me, at what point, because you said you have choices in mobility. And I think it's easy for a lot of people who have a really fun ride in life to get lost in all of that comfort and that goodness and all of the mobility, all of the choices that we then have laid before us. Mm-hmm. So how did you stay focused on listening to yourself and staying really sensitive to hearing yourself and listening to those impulses and being able to like all of a sudden drop in on an intuitive level? Like that, I mean, obviously that's you, but if you said you come from a place of trauma, like at some point you taught yourself to get sensitive and you taught yourself to listen. And how did you do that?
I think when I started experiencing, probably like in 11th grade, I started, like I met I was always had peripheral adults that supported me, and then coaches and, let's say a boyfriend and his family. And I think I was really clear about the difference, being in a place of not feeling happy, scared, unsupported, and then feeling at least that there were people who took an interest in me. And so I feel like at that time, I was so clear about the difference of that I wasn't going to not only not recognize it, it's like in Hawaii, they talk about, the Polynesians never were about ownership, right? You were a good steward, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've gotten to like the fact that I could play volleyball, make a living, whatever. I was like, this isn't about me. We're all just conduits for something. And so I'm going to be a good steward. I'm going to be a diligent steward. I'm going to be a student of life. I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, I know that. It's like, I don't know, like you don't, and if certainly as you get older, you're like, it's, you know nothing. And that is, how do I keep my eyes open and be a good steward of whatever, space I'm in charge of right now, and be a good student. And part of that would be checking in with oneself. I could say this, I recently interviewed two different people. Sunil Gupta wrote a book about being backable, what makes someone backable. So he's an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Then Dr. Caroline Leaf, who's a neuroscientist, and she talks about your mental mess and things like that. One of the first things she talks about is to observe yourself. They both said something in their interviews that I thought was so interesting, that is so true to all of us, which is, what's it going to take to manage your psychology? What are we doing here? We all have certain tendencies and movements. How do we find the way to manage our psychology? Notice I didn't use the word control, manage our psychology. And part of that is just noticing like ourselves, because, if you talk about even the science of being happiness, I wouldn't say I'm very even keeled. I wouldn't walk around like, oh, I'm so blissed out. I'm not that way, but I don't go down too far. It's also knowing that if each day you're practicing looking and noticing like, wow, it's beautiful out. I enjoyed that meal. I visited with my friends, that your neuroreceptors will look for good news. This would be a discipline to support your happiness. Conversely, if you're like, oh, I ate a bagel and it was soggy, and then, the guy driving in the car was so slow, your neuroreceptors are looking for all the bad news. So there's things we can implement to support us one way or the other, right? So if you're bitching and complaining all the time, you're going to find it. Laird always jokes like, if I'm looking for a fight, all I have to do is walk outside my door.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just put on your fight glasses and all of a sudden you'll see fights everywhere. Yeah.
every So I think it's just that, and it seems like common sense to me. And again, maybe I use the discipline that I exercise as an athlete and kind of exerted that will on myself a little bit as a person to help me. But I think too, getting it out, like telling somebody, hey, I'm bumpy today. Hey, I hate my family today. I barely can walk out of my bedroom because I don't want to see anyone.
Yeah.
Or I'm scared, or whatever it is. I think also just being able to safely find having that person or people that you can go like, it sucks to, or
Today's not a good day. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And to be okay with that. When you were talking about that guy who was talking about flow, do you mean the flow like that energy when you're just moving through things? Is that the flow you're talking about? Was that what he was talking about?
Flow state. So
Yeah.
Stephen, waiting for Superman, the art of the impossible. He's written so many books, but flow state, and an athlete, that's Alex Gunnell when he climbed the mountain. It's like in that moment you're probably functioning more in your subconscious. Either your brain's either slowing things down or speeding things up. It's like when you hear about people going, I was in a car accident and it was flipping and everything was in slow motion. That's actually flow state. So what they say, interestingly, about flow state, which video games, weirdly, TV takes you out of flow, video games can actually put you into flow, is that the first thing that shows up before you can go into flow state is struggle.
Hmm.
So when you talk about this full spectrum of living, it's like, let's not be afraid that things are hard or uncomfortable, because sometimes to get into the place where we are our full selves, where we don't have to think and we can be our best selves, our fastest selves, our smartest selves, ourselves that make the best decisions. Maybe artists obviously have it. Again, I still think it's all about then being just a portal for some. I think a painter or a musician, I have a friend of mine and I talk about this all the time. It's like sometimes you might have that day that you go into flow and whatever it is you've created is better than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the first thing that's going to show up, the first step into flow is resistance.
And I know you're going to agree with me on this point. I think a part of being ready for flow state is to have your body trained and primed and ready. And would you like, I think that even if you're an artist, like, because I mean, I've been in flow state both on a stage, you know what I mean? When I'm in it and it is not, I'm just like, and and you can feel the audience and you can pull them this way or that way. I've also been in a flow state where I was in the middle of an explosion and I saw a thing just literally go by in slow motion where I was like, oh, okay, I'm in a different reality. But I would make the argument that I have to run. I do the cold. I keep my pool really, really cold and I'll jump I used to swim in the ocean. I'd do the ocean, then run home and then jump in the pool to cool everything down. Because when I have an audition or when I have to go and be my best self, I feel like my body has to be like race ready. I have to be my best self. So I think that's key. I think being healthy is key to being like ready for that flow state. You agree? I mean, obviously, I think you kind of live in that. You guys seem to kind of live in that world.
You know what it is? I think it's helpful. I think even just like the tissue that makes your brain, like the same 75% of the same as your gut. So if we were saying like your health, why would we encourage people to eat foods that it supported their gut? Because ultimately it would support their moods, their reactions, and so I also not only think it makes it easier to get into these pockets of flow or homeostasis, but it's also for longer, meaning 60, 70, 80, so I think we could actually get away with certain things, like painters, they're smoking and they're drinking, whatever. And then I don't know what the age is it 40 moving into 50? then I think they say, maybe we take the gift back. But so I think I think when they say mind, body, spirit, the body is an avatar that if we can keep that sharper, then I do think it helps us manage the harder, more abstract things like our spirits, our personalities, our feelings. And because even exercising the discipline of eating this and not that, or moving when you don't want to, it helps us then when we're like, I want to really overreact here, but maybe I'm not. And so I think it's a really straightforward place to practice, but then also for longer, which in the end, Laird has said something that helps me when I'm having something with a human. Well, how's that working for them?
Right.
We all want justice or whatever. And sometimes it's like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. A little like let it go.
Do your thing. And that practice. So yeah, of course, if you're healthy, but there's going to be plenty of people listening to this who are like, listen, with the race ready and I'm not an athlete and all that. And I get that. However, there's no way around sort of having the more opportunities we can flex that discipline. And one of them would be in our physical practice. The other stuff is.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's say that there's a little grandma watching this right now, and she's like, "I'm stuck at home and I can't do anything." Like,
Right.
what is literally something practical that they can do starting tomorrow or tonight after they watch this thing, and they're going, "You know what? I'm feeling motivated."
Okay, this is like I always say, like I'm a lycra girl. I always joke that like yoga and meditators are cotton girls. I'm like a performance girl, but really ultimate is where lycra and cotton meet. And what I mean by that, so I'm allowed to deliver this message, is okay, if I was, let's say, someone chronologically, biologically older, because I know plenty of people that are 80 that are younger than people I know that are 50. So okay, is first of all, we have to manage what we're eating every day because it's the accumulation. Okay, number one. Number two, if you say to me, hey, I live in a building and I can't really get outside and I'm afraid of COVID, then I would say, weirdly, very rigorous breathing exercises.
Okay.
So by that, 3 parts breath. So let me explain it. I'll try to be quick and simple. If we're mouth breathing, visualize somebody. They always say that the casting agents get it right. The idiots in the movies always are mouth breathers. You see them, they're like, okay. Think about a person who stands with their jaw shut and their nose breathing. People will say, well, I can't get as much air through your nose. No, you can't. But moisture will build between your lungs and your nasal passageway. It will become easier. It is a practice. Now, here's the deal. Why should you nose breathe? Number one reason is the oxygen that's in your bloodstream, okay? The only way it can go into your cells and tissue, which would be your muscles, is with the presence of CO2. If you're a free diver, what are you doing? Scrubbing your CO2, getting rid of it, the impulse, right, to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're breathing all the time from your mouth, you are scrubbing your CO2. So if you close your mouth and nose breathe, first into the tummy, very hard to do. Most of us are chest breathing.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, into the diaphragm, with the
So
diaphragm, yeah.
if people can't do it naturally, when they inhale through their nose, I say just lightly put your finger on your belly and push your belly out. Force it. As you breathe in, stick your belly out. So you can connect the diaphragm with the inhale. You can feel it, process it. The second part of the breath comes in. If you could get down to the floor, I would say easier to lay down on your bed. Try not to go to sleep. The lower ribs, think of them opening up if you're laying down to the ceiling. Again, this is a visualization. You could use color and you visualize a ball that's this color. You bring your ball into the belly, then the ball into the ribs, then finally almost into the lats, the back and the lats, up and open. The other thing people do is vertical breathing, right? You want to do a round horizontal. So think of the ribs. Use the breath to push the ribs open because then you make room for the lungs. Okay. The other thing is now we are absorbing the oxygen into the cells and tissue. This is good health. Breathing in and out, oxygenating your cells in your tissues. Okay. So one, we're going to nose breathe, 3 parts breath. Why? We need CO2 to absorb the oxygen. 2, we're going to think of a horizontal breath. Now, the other thing that this does, especially during a time like COVID, is down-regulate you. What does that mean? It takes you out of fight or flight. It puts you in your parasympathetic. Sympathetic, let's run, let's fight. Parasympathetic, I'm chill, I'm calm, okay? And then finally, and very importantly, is that if you're down regulating in your 3 parts breath, you're breathing, if you're really getting into it, 4 to 5 full, that means inhale and exhales per minute. Most people are doing 10 to 13. So now you're ramping up.
Hello, yeah.
Breath out, you're not absorbing oxygen. If you have kids, they should be sleeping with their mouth closed, their myofascial development of their jaws, the oxidation of your teeth, all of this because of mouth breathing, okay? So there's so much. Now, if you want to get crazy and you go, okay, we're going to exercise using the breath.
Yeah, I do.
We're pumping our breath. So we're sitting down. If you do 10 or 15 minutes of that, let me tell you what you've done. You've worked out.
Wow, okay.
So stuck at home and they go, I don't exercise, start there. And then if they really want to get crazy, squat down as much as you can, do 3 or 4 sets of 10, okay? Things like that. Movement, it isn't about, it's a little bit about time and under tension and remembering that the body is meant to move. But start with the breathing and notice if you're sitting at your desk working, if you're doing this or
yeah.
And even the weight of our heads, right? You hear people all the time, they're on our phones, we're like this. Get your chin back and in. Think of your spine running long. Think of your head reaching up. These are simple things that if we just practice a little each day, I don't need to get into high performance with everybody and start talking about, optimal performance. And, I can get into all that. But if that's the other thing about COVID that I think is so important to remember, maybe for some of us, this is not the time to be like, I'm running a marathon.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's about, let's just get through this the best.
Yeah. Let's keep our sanity and get through it. That's amazing.
Talk about toxic training right now.
That was my next question. You just summed up my entire freshman year at NYU, by the way, with your breathing, because that's exactly all we learned freshman year. It was like they were teaching us how to breathe diaphragmatically, how to take in those deep, rounded breaths, push the ribs out, the stomach goes out, and when you inhale, because it is counterintuitive. You have to train your body. So that's amazing. So people at home, they can do 15 minutes of that, you're saying, and that's an amazing workout?
If you did some pump breathing like that, you'll be tired, and there's a guy named Dr. Andy Galpin, and he talks about breaking carbon bonds. When you are running or you're exerting yourself or you're doing rigorous breathing, you are breaking carbon bonds. So it's hard, and people be like, oh, it's hard. And there's plenty of people go, oh, I can't meditate, it's too chill. Great, I'm going to drill and say, then you'll do 30 rigorous breaths, then you'll go down to box breathing. So you could go like, you don't even have to do box breathing, 7 in, 7 out, 7 in, 7 out. If you want to get fancy.
You're talking seconds, right? 7 seconds in, 7 seconds out.
And also when people exhale, it's important. Think of health and vitality in expansion and openness. So when you're exhaling, you don't want to be like, you want to be still, belly button to spine, everything is long. Even in the exhale, because exhale, people collapse. We're not doing that. We're open, we're big, we're long, we're into vitality. So people also do like 7 seconds in, 7-second hold, 7-second out, 7-second hold. That's called box breathing. So there's so many ways to use the breath. And then you go, okay, I'm ready to go again. Boom, 30 reps. So they can also create a task in their mind Then set a timer off to the side. Do that for the whole time. Start with 5 minutes. Let's get realistic.
Yeah.
Then let's move to 7. Then let's move to 10. Then let's move, if you get crazy, 12 and 15. And that will be a rigorous workout. And if you have people already training and moving, they can use this for their recovery.
There you go. You heard it. You heard it here first. Gabby, I have to, if anyone's watched this show like from the beginning, they will probably be able to say like, what was going on with you at the beginning of the show? I was so nervous to have you on today.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I was like, I finally calmed down like, I don't know, like 15 minutes ago. I'm going to let you go here because we're coming near the end of the hour.
Okay.
You have the Gabby Reece Show. It's a podcast. You've been doing it. Did you just start this last year or have you been doing it for a while?
I was doing something called The Truth Peril with Neil Strauss. Then he went and did something else, crime mysteries. And I have my own show called The Gabby Reece Show. I usually have, I have like a lot of scientists or athletes. I just actually have one coming out tomorrow, a lady who lost her husband unexpectedly. And so we do the whole thing on grief. And really, what does it mean to support someone in grief or to go through grief? And my whole thing is, how do we talk about stuff that we just help each other? And I am obviously into information. So I try to say it's sort of based into something because I feel like the more we can share like what you're doing and remind people that 1, we can do it. 2, there's information out there to support. And that 3, we're not alone in this. I think it makes it a lot easier.
That's awesome. Have you been able to kind of connect the dots? You bring all these experts on and they all talk about something different.
Mm-hmm.
Have you started to see through lines being human and like?
It is the one I said earlier, which is it is about managing your psychology. It's not about being born with a perfect psychology. Incorrectly, it's about learning the tools for you specifically, because we're all different, to help us manage, to help us navigate. And also, though, to keep our minds open to learning, because what worked for me 10 years ago maybe doesn't work now, and what's going to work in 5 different than today. And so to be the eternal student is super important without like eating popcorn. I'm not talking about like, oh, now I'm into that. It's like you're going to have a foundation, but keep your mind open.
Keep your mind open. And you have a book that people can buy, right? There's a book.
Oh, going hard. It's okay. Yeah, my foot's too big for the glass slipper.
Yeah, your foot is too big for the glass slipper.
It is. Believe.
Sure. And then I've got to say hi. My sister-in-law, Katie. She played volleyball at Belmont. She then went off to become a model. You're like a huge. She's like, you've worked with Gabby. I was like, yeah. Her name's Katie.
Well, appreciate what you're doing, and you're a gentleman and a kind spirit, and you should never be nervous to talk to anyone.
Well, I'm normally not. But I got in a weird. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know why. And then, best beach on Kauai to surf. I'm writing. Do you know I'm writing books? I'm writing a 5-series books about.
I'm not allowed to say that. Kauai.
Okay.
It's so policed here. Are you kidding?
Are you not supposed to surf?
No. Kauai, they keep it very quiet here.
Oh, you don't want anybody. I'm right. Yeah.
I just don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
There's a lot of good surf on Kauai. Say that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, I saw a couple people. Dr. Kate Shanahan, the Hateful Eight, is the woman I was talking about, the oil. Somebody asked that at the end.
Okay. All right. You're awesome.
So are you.
Come back.
Aloha. Anytime.
Aloha. Bye, Gabby.
Okay. Aloha. Bye, everyone.
There you have it, guys. There you have it. Gabby Reece. I really was, man. I was like a little nervous kid. Last time I saw her she had a baby and I was about to have my baby. And there you go. That's why I wanted her on the show, because just an incredible fount of wisdom. And you should look at the book. The book is called My Foot is Too Big for the Glass Slipper. It was published May of 2013. She became a New York Times bestseller because of that book. A really interesting point of view on womanhood and regarding marriage. And all right, dudes, that's all I got for you this week. Thank you so much for joining in to the Polaha Chautauqua. I just want to pray that all of you guys have an amazing week this week, and that you are lifted up and inspired to breathe and move and stay active and stay positive in this really, really weird time. I think you can feel it, right? Spring is upon us here soon. We're going to be moving out of winter, and life marches on. So stay the course, you guys, and have an amazing week. I will see you. I think what happens next week, it's the Super Bowl and then it's Valentine's. So there's a little bit of a gap here as to what February is going to look like. But I'm hoping to have somebody come on the show next weekend, but the show might not be at its regular time. So you'll have to just kind of go with the flow on that one. And then I don't think there's going to be a show on Valentine's Day. Because I'm going to be in Nashville. So there will be that. Peace, dudes. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.